Mistakes, written and read by Bad Writer. Chapter 1 to 10. Summary. 8th year dumbass Harry who thinks it's not cheating because he's not gay. Well, let's just say all parties are idiots here. A quick warning, this fic contains a lot of smut and some triggers that include bad BDSM etiquette, discussions of consent. Make sure you read the tags on the original fic and check the description for more information. Chapter 1. Harry couldn't tell when it started. When he first saw Malfoy after his trial. That night in Grimmauld Place with too many tears and shouts. Malfoy running his alabaster hands through near-white tendrils. The couch in the manor when Harry had come to apologize. The near-dawn limbo of lingering gazes, furrowed brows, and those steely eyes that held something a little more than hate. Half morning, with the scent of fire whiskey on the softest lips Harry had ever kissed. As his control melted away, a sick creature forming in his place. Something that had never existed inside him, now controlling every movement. Bucking hips, hands holding down the back of a neck, pressing it further into the warmth of a pillow. The impossibly animalistic slap of skin, in and out, in and out. Or was it the night after that, in Malfoy's bedroom, after he'd come back to apologize the second time? A few snappy remarks, a sneer, a shove. That's all it took for the demon to arise once more. Rattling bedposts muted by their helpless insults thrown between delicious moans. No, it wasn't then. Madame Malkin's? Harry's 6th year obsession? Harry had no clue how he'd let himself slip so low. How he'd let himself become this. His 8th year wasn't meant to be this. Head down studying, free of Voldemort's burden. Not kissing his amazing girlfriend softly during the day, whilst pounding into his worst enemy at night. Harry loved Ginny. She was kind and tough and perfect. His heart grew 1,000 times when he was with her. His arm over her shoulder as they laughed with Ron and Hermione. It felt right. It was everything he ever wanted. Harry hated Malfoy. He was sick and twisted and fucking delicious. He moaned and grunted and begged for more like a fucking spoilt brat. He was horrible. He cursed and swore and threw whatever he could get his hands on when he was in the mood. He knew what he was doing to Harry, and he didn't seem to fucking care. If anything, he relished in it. Arching back into him, swallowing him whole, staining his already pale lashes, daring Harry's patience with him more and more, begging for rougher, more violence. Whining when he was slammed against walls, keening into Harry's reddening hand, moaning for spit instead of lube. It was like all the anger Harry had bottled up inside of him was being released all at once, and Draco just begged for more. It felt like breathing for the first time after drowning. It became a game far too easily. The teasing comments, the jeers Draco threw his way, daring Harry to shove him up against his desk and fuck him senseless in front of everyone. Harry wasn't even gay. He wasn't. He'd never fucked a bloke before Malfoy. He knew this wasn't a gay thing. It had to be a Malfoy thing. He didn't have the urge to bend over any other bloke and drill them till there was no tomorrow. He didn't want to suck anyone else's dick or tongue their hole. That was a Malfoy thing. Harry had a girlfriend. And he was fucking Malfoy. He hadn't let the fact hit him until the first time he saw Draco on a date with some Slytherin 7th year boy at Hogsmeade. He wasn't in control of any part of himself when he slammed the door shut to Draco's room. Draco looked up from his book, eyes glinting. "Potter, unfortunately I'm all fucked out for the night," he said, setting the book down at his nightstand. He was in his silk pajamas, soft and cold at the same time. He certainly didn't look fucked out. He looked positively untouched, though he always did. The pompous, self-obsessed git. "Strip." Harry could only grunt, refusing to move from the doorway. Draco's brow shot up, yet he didn't move, a smirk pulling at his lips. "Didn't you hear me? I'm all fucked out. If you want me, you'll have to make me," he said, that cool, calculating smirk unmoving as Harry's expression darkened, teeth glinting, fire in his veins. "I said," Harry grunted, still static. "Get your fucking clothes off." Draco's little grin dropped, sitting up, unreadable. "You'll have to make me, Potter," he said, unsure of himself and his words. "You are going to get yourself ready and naked right now, or I'll leave, you fucking slag." Harry hadn't meant to spit that out. It came out sure and frozen and sickly. So dangerous. Draco practically vibrated as he sprung up off the bed, eyes glazing over, fumbling over buttons, cock springing out as silk pajamas fell on the floor. Draco's body was inhumanly perfect. Real people didn't look like that. Lithe and slim, broad shoulders and delicately long legs. A pinched waist that appeared almost feminine if it wasn't for that perfect prick standing at attention between his legs. "Sit on the bed. I'm gonna fuck your mouth. I swear to Merlin, Malfoy, if you touch yourself at all, you're never coming again." He wasn't sure who was speaking. Had anyone else been in the room, Harry would have assumed it was them. And then he was walking, unbuttoning his belt as he came to stand in front of a seated Malfoy. Before he had a chance to pull his cock out and slip it between pretty pink lips, he crouched down to eye level with Malfoy's hard gaze. "If you're going to act like a fucking whore, then you'll get treated like one." And then he leaned even closer, his lips hovering just above Malfoy's ear. "Who knew, Malfoy, that you'd been gagging for it like a fucking tart? You've got all that money, but you're just as worthless as a bloody rent boy." Malfoy made a little noise that sounded half like a plea, half like a whine. And given that, leaving his lips half parted, Harry pulled out his cock. Without instruction, Draco opened his mouth wider, hot breath on the head. "Would you look at that? Maybe you are worth something after all." And then he slammed his cock back into Draco's throat. Harry hated how good it felt when Draco's throat tightened around him in an attempt to gag, still tugging at silver locks, impressed with the coarse hair along Harry's abdomen. He knew Malfoy could take it. It'd hurt, it'd burn as he tried to gag away. Yet he made no move to take his hands from where they were, tangled in the bedsheets. Normally he would. Normally, at the beginning, he'd make a few lazy attempts to regain control, to trick himself into thinking that he and Harry were playing on equal fields. Like that he didn't love being fucked like this. It was the reason Draco had denied having a safe word, despite Harry warning against it. He didn't say it in so many words, other than, "Potter, if I want you off me, I'll make damn sure you know it." Harry was sick of pretend. He was a fucking slag through and through, evident through the low moans rippling through him as Harry slammed into his mouth, again and again, never giving him a second to breathe. It was time he stopped pretending to be anything than Harry's favourite fuck toy. "Your mouth was made to please me, Malfoy. You shouldn't spend all your time talking shit with it. Just keep it on my cock. Yeah, like that." Malfoy purred, and Harry felt the guttural noise through his balls. He could feel the heat pooling in his stomach, building quickly. "Fuck," he pulled out. This time, Draco let out a high-pitched squeak and leaned forward in an attempt to take Harry back in his mouth again. Harry swatted him away, drool coating Draco's chin, tears in his wild eyes. He looked drunk, dazed, insane. Harry couldn't help but massage his hands through that hair, tugging at it. "Can you taste yourself from this morning? Bet you like the taste of that, egotistic brat." Draco didn't even blink. He seemed deaf, confused, eyes slowly glazing over with lust. "On your stomach, ass up," Harry instructed, slipping out of his daze. Draco rolled onto the bed, back arched in a perfect curve so his twinkling little hole winked over at him. Harry grunted, pinning Draco's shoulders to the sheets. "Did you let him fuck you?" Harry whispered, drool-lubed cock sliding along the cleft of his arse. Draco then tried to shake his head, but it found Harry's grip too strong. "Did he?" Harry snapped, holding him tighter. "No, he whacked me off," Draco moaned, spurred back against Harry's cock helplessly. Earning himself a sharp slap against his arse, he hissed and arched back up into it further. "Poor fucker. Never even got to find out how tight your pretty little ass feels," he chuckled darkly, spanking again. "He make you come harder than I do?" asked Harry, slowly stroking himself. "God, no." His hoarse, fucked-out voice helpless as Harry slipped a saliva-coated finger in. No one ever has. Yes, fuck. Only you." If only they knew how easy it was. How you become my little bitch with a spanking and a good shag. What would they think if they saw their Slytherin prince like this? 2 fingers, harder, scissoring, grazing that perfect place Harry knew almost on instinct. Draco mewed, head thrown back, trying to push himself further around Harry. With a snicker, Harry pulled out, cock at the ready, painfully hard and begging for release. "I'm coming, then you're done. You better come, or you'll have to wait till I'm in the mood again. Don't dare touch yourself." Draco had come untouched before, a shock to them both one night in their shared bathroom. But who could blame them? Their bodies were still riddled with adolescence at 18. It was an impossible task to ask of him, yet Draco groaned, crying out, begging for Harry to let him come, begging to touch himself. Harry ignored him. And then he was inside. No matter how many times they did this, one thing always remained the same. Draco's soft, slick heat always sucked him up. It pulled him in tight as possible. It was the best thing Harry had ever felt. Being with a girl had never felt like that. Granted, he'd only ever been with one girl, but nothing was as tight as Draco. He was being swallowed into him. It was like something deep, deep inside Draco needed him desperately. So he couldn't help himself as he pulled out and back in, thrusting fully, hard and uncontrollable. And, oh God, there were no words to explain the perfection of Draco's ass, how tight it held him as it clutched around him with every hard, unrelenting thrust, unperturbed in an attempt to hold Harry in for as long as possible. "Oh, yes. Oh, Salazar, Harry!" Draco whimpered, pushing back to meet his every thrust. Hard, deep and hard as Harry shoved Draco's head back into the pillows. More! Harder, please!" came his soft noises, almost inaudible through the cotton. "There you go, pet. You're getting it," he growled, leaning down to suck at the length of Draco's beautiful, unmarred throat, biting down through the waves of pleasure. Good. You're getting there, Draco. See, you can be a good boy for me, can't you? Please, Draco was chanting, breath hitching, muscles tensed. He was so fucking close. So was Harry. Be good then. Come for me. And then, without a second more, Draco let out a terribly magnificent wail and spurted onto the bedsheets. Harry grinned at Draco's pliancy, thrusting harder in and out into an overstimulated Draco. Yet still, Draco made no move of protest. He let his body relax, allowing Harry to grip his hip and fuck into him with all the force he had. Draco's breath was too slow, too steady, calm, at peace as Harry fucked and came with impossible force, forehead pressed into the crook of Draco's neck, sucking another Hickey into his perfect skin, before rolling off with a tired harumph. "That better than that lanky 7th year?" Harry said with a chuckle, sweat dripping down his temple. Draco snorted, tilting his head to face Harry. You know it was. And then he paused, a soft grin on his face once more. "That better than Weaselette?" Harry couldn't help but snicker. "You jealous?" Draco tried to shake his head, basking in post-orgasm. "No, just have to know for comparison if I take Thomas up on his offer. Gotta know what I'm up against." Harry turned to face him fully now, pulling those blonde strands back behind his ear. "Dean wants to fuck you." "Everyone wants to fuck me. I'm the only out guy at the school. I'm everyone's one chance to experiment." "Slag," Draco snorted, biting his lip, still staring. "I've only let one person get inside, though." Harry smiled. He did know that. It was always a nice little reminder that no matter what, he'd always have Malfoy's virginity to wear on his sleeve. "That's because you know who you belong to," Harry said, leaning forward to capture Draco's lips in a chaste, salty kiss. "You never answered me," Draco whispered, their noses brushing. "She better than me?" Harry had to laugh, because there was no way Draco had just asked him that. Draco was objectively amazing in bed. Not even because of Harry's weird obsession with him. Not only did he have the face and body for it, he was just straight up, unexplainably fantastic at it. "Baby, you do think I'd be here right now if she was? You know I wasn't lying. If you weren't already drowning in money, you could sell yourself, and you'd probably have more money than you do right now." Draco let out a choked laugh, grabbing the sheets from where they'd fallen off the side of the bed, plucking them up, draping them over them both. "Well, if my father ever disowns me, at least I'll have your letter of recommendation." And then, with a soft yawn, reaching past Harry to switch his bedside lamp off. "You staying the night?" "I'll stay for a bit, but I probably should be gone before you wake up." Draco hummed into darkness, reaching over, despite the stain in the middle of the bed, pulling himself into Harry's chest, kissing gently at his shoulder. "Night, Potter. Night, Malfoy." Chapter 2. Harry had left Draco's room after dozing off for a few hours. He'd crawled out of bed just past 1, slipping into his clothes, listening to the soft hum of Draco's snores. It was easy for them to do this. Harry's dorm was just next to Draco's, only divided by the bathroom, working like a secret chamber between the two rooms. No one would ever see a thing. Even if they did, what would they think? Certainly not that the two had been having fantastic, mind-blowing sex. He showered first, cleaning off the sweat coating his skin, feeling rather sated in the way he could only ever feel after a night with Malfoy. He was grinning to himself until he heard the knock on the door. "Harry?" Ginny called. Harry gulped and switched off the faucet, dashing over to the mirror to check for any marks Draco may have left. None. Harry sighed with relief, wrapping a towel around his waist. "It's unlocked." The door opened, and Ginny slipped inside. She was in Ron's old cannon shirt, and a pair of Harry's boxers with a rip at the side. She smiled softly, and looked him up and down. "Hermione told me the password. she explained, though she didn't need to. Someone always told Ginny the password to the 8th year dorms. "How long were you waiting?" he asked, shielding his face of expression. "About half an hour, don't worry. I didn't have anything better to do anyway," she said, elbowing his side. He chuckled, ignoring the relief in his chest. She paused to stare at him, a smile pulling at her lips, and she leaned up on the balls of her feet to press her mouth to his. That, of course, was when the door flung open, once more, to reveal Draco Malfoy, half naked, spare for a pair of green boxers, covered in hickeys, his hair a mess from a mix of sex and sleep. "Would you both mind keeping it down? Some people are trying to sleep," he said evenly, a smirk forming in his lips. "If you're going to shag, at least have some decency and cast a silencing charm, or better yet, move it to your own room." Ginny rolled her eyes, detaching herself from Harry to stare at Malfoy, before letting out a squeak of a laugh that made Harry's whole heart freeze. "Nice hickeys, Malfoy! You finally give Dean a shot, then?" Harry stared, and for a horrible moment, thought Draco was going to tell the truth. "Whitby, actually, your year." Ginny raised a brow. "He's bent. I swear he's dating Astoria." Draco shrugged, now grinning with his pearl-white teeth. "Oh, he is. But you know how it is, Weaselette. Some people just can't keep their boyfriend satisfied." He looked at Harry with that smirk full of challenge. Harry could feel the heat rising to his cheeks. Thankfully, Ginny was too busy giggling to herself. "You're such an ass, Malfoy. But then again, so's Astoria, so who knows who's in the right?" "Well, whomever it is, it definitely isn't Whitby," added Draco, still smirking at Harry. Harry scowled and collected his stuff from the bathroom floor before taking Ginny's hand and ushering them both past Malfoy. "Have fun, Potter," Malfoy called after them as Harry opened his bedroom door, escorting himself and Ginny inside. "Eager," Ginny said, kissing him again, reaching her hand to undo Harry's towel. Harry flushed. He'd already come that night. And even after Ginny broke the kiss to throw her shirt over his face, Harry didn't feel any heat for it. And seriously, Harry was 18, not 40. His body really needed to get a grip on the fact that his very attractive girlfriend was naked before him. Gin," he said, taking a step from her when she approached. "I'm actually kind of tired." Ginny went pink and rushed to throw a shirt over herself. "Sorry," he said sheepishly. "No," she quickly spluttered. No, it's fine. Seriously, it's fine. I'm pretty tired too, Harry. It's all good." "So you came all this way to sleep in my bed?" he asked, feeling a little guilty now. Ginny didn't answer, simply taking his hand and leading them over to the bed, slipping under the covers and instructing Harry to do the same. She settled into him, her head pressed into his chest, right where Draco had been lying not 10 minutes prior. And he did everything in his mind not to think about how much of an arsehole he was. Chapter 3. Breakfast the next morning was quiet with the 8th year Gryffindors. Ron and Hermione had gotten into a fight the night prior. Harry couldn't keep up with what, and honestly, he was too afraid to ask. Ginny sat beside him, her head resting against his shoulder, reaching over to take a bite from his plate, snatching a piece of bacon. "Hey," he said, nudging her. "Well, you weren't acting like you were going to eat it," she said, still chewing. "Well, I was." "Should have been quicker about it then," she snorted, turning her head to kiss his cheek. He grinned properly and wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. Then, as if remembering something, she bounced a little in her chair, facing the other Gryffindors, who now seemed alert at her strange behavior. "Guess what Harry and I found out," she said in a stage whisper. Hermione and Ron both perked up from their sulking. "You know Thomas Whitby, Slytherin, my year?" she continued, and Harry went a bit green. "The prick who bat-bogeyed last week?" asked Ron, piercing his egg with his fork. Ginny nodded. Well, he's banging Malfoy. Ron winced. At the same time, Hermione said, No, he's not. He's with Astoria. Exactly, Ginny said, practically vibrating with glee. Hermione gasped. Ron frowned, and Harry, with great effort, did not react. What an ass, added Ron with a frown. I know, right? Said Ginny. Whitby has always been horrible. Something caught in Harry's throat, forcing him to speak. But isn't it, also Malfoy's fault too? I mean, he knows Whitby is dating Astoria and he still went after him. We don't actually know Whitby's side of the story. Yeah, maybe Harry's got a point, contemplated Ron. I wouldn't put it past Malfoy just to shag someone in order to create general chaos. Ginny and Hermione both shook their heads, with Ginny finally saying, Well, yeah, I guess. And I'm not defending Malfoy here, but it really isn't his responsibility to care. I mean, he's not in a relationship, Whitby is. And besides, society makes a point of blaming other women rather than the actual cheater. It's inherently sexist to believe that anyone other than Whitby be blamed. But Malfoy isn't a woman, Harry thought it important to add, scowling a little. And besides, isn't it inherently homophobic that you blame Whitney for experimenting with his sexuality? You're right, Harry, it would be, if Whitby weren't in a relationship, but he is, so my point stands, replied Hermione. And all I'm saying is that Malfoy isn't completely innocent either. What's this about Malfoy? Asked Dean, taking a seat beside Ron. Of course you want to know about Malfoy, Ginny added with a snort. Something foreign bubbled in the pit of Harry's stomach. Something that had been seeping into him since the beginning of the conversation. He's shagging Whitby, even though Whitby is dating Greengrass. Shagged, Harry thought it important to correct, despite knowing full well that it was completely false. Well, I don't blame Whitby, Green said with a smirk. Thank you, Harry cheered, finally proud someone understood his point. Malfoy is really fit. Harry blanched and Ron groaned. Seriously, mate, I thought you were over this. What on earth gave that impression? Well, I was hoping that him being a megalomaniac might have spurred you away. Ron gritted. Come on, Ron, the guy saved my life, said Dean wistfully. Wrong, he just didn't let you starve to death while you were a prisoner in his home. Same difference. Ron rolled his eyes. Well, by the sounds of things, looks like you got a shot, because apparently Malfoy's a bit of a slag. Hermione leaned over and slapped Ron's arm. Don't use that word. It's demeaning to women. Malfoy isn't a woman, Harry chided for the second time that day. And who said I'm just after a fuck anyway? Did I mention he's fit as hell? Why would I throw that chance away for one time with him? I mean, come on. He gestured over to the furthest table where Malfoy was seated. Harry couldn't help but look. There was Malfoy, sitting comfortably beside Goyle and Parkinson. He was laughing. A real laugh, the kind that made his perfect teeth show and his Adam's apple bob. His hair wasn't gelled today. Actually, he hadn't been putting anything in it recently, as he'd grown it out, near white tendrils falling over his face, masking his perfect widow's peak. It reached his chin now, not long enough to tie up completely, but sometimes he'd have the front tied to keep it out of his face. It was also easy for Harry to pull like that, eliciting a high-pitched whine whenever Harry tugged. The Hickey Harry had left below his jaw still visible, a deep purple from where Harry had sucked on it. His lips were slightly pink, and Harry knew if they were closer, he'd be able to see how raw and bitten they were. Harry itched to run his thumb along the bottom lip, imagined it stained glossy with his cum, dribbling down Malfoy's chin. And then, he thought, he'd catch the line of white with his finger and force it back into Draco's mouth, watching him lick and suck it clean. Harry, Ginny said, waving a hand in front of his face. Harry gulped, crossing his legs as to ignore the semi. and turned to her. "Sorry, phased out for a bit." Ginny gave him a soft smile and squeezed his hand. "It's all right," she said softly. "You know, we all have those moments. It's really nothing to be ashamed of." God, Harry really felt like an asshole then, using his girlfriend's understanding of his PTSD to ogle at Malfoy. "I know," he said quietly before turning away, trying to focus on literally anything else. Out of the corner of his eye, he could see the blonde head rising to stand, and Harry's body wasn't his own anymore. He stood, turning to the others. "I've got to go. I'll see you in class." And before he could let them reply or ask where he was going, he was off, pushing past the herd of fourth years to dash down the hallway, following the head of blonde up the winding stairs as the group began to dissipate. When Draco had reached the tapestry that hid the small alcove, Harry was behind him, reaching out and shoving Malfoy inside, holding him steady as Malfoy writhed and swore. "What the fuck?" he snapped, unable to see his attacker from where Harry had pinned him. "Get your bloody hands off me, or I'll—" Harry let go of Malfoy's shoulder to hold his waist instead, feeling those muscles tense at his touch. "You'll what?" he said, breathing into Malfoy's ear. "Potter," Malfoy whispered, his tone still biting, but his body gave him away, relaxing into Harry's touch. "God, you're such a tease, Malfoy," he grunted, grinding his still-present semi along Draco's ass. "I've got runes, Potter. I can't," he whined, pressing his body back into Harry's. "Then you shouldn't have tempted me, Malfoy. You act like that, you get punished." "If I remember correctly, Potter, I haven't done anything to you today. I've been good. And now I have to go to class." Still, he made no move to leave, instead turning his head, allowing Harry to kiss him. It was rough, it always was, a hard, angry kiss, as Harry's tongue dipped inside, grazing Draco's mouth. "You didn't have to do anything. You just looking like that is a fucking crime in itself," he groaned against Draco's lips. "And if you're good," he added, smiling coyly, leaning forward to take Draco's bottom lip in his mouth, as he hastened to undo Draco's trousers, "I'll reward you." "Are you going to be good?" he asked, reaching around to palm Draco's cock. Draco let out a low moan and struggled against Harry's grip. Not enough to break the hold, but just enough to throw some semblance of defiance. "No?" he asked coolly, reaching around to palm Draco's cock. Draco let out a low moan and struggled against Harry's grip. Not enough to break the hold, but just enough to show some semblance of defiance. "No?" he asked coolly. "All right then. I was going to eat you out, make you come with my tongue in you. But I guess if you're going to be bad, you don't deserve that." "No," Draco whimpered, leaning forward now to clutch at the wall, to arch where Harry was rutting against him. "Please, Potter." "Don't be a bitch, Draco. Only good boys get rewards." "You've got two options," he whispered, leaning over Draco, hand returning to his cock. "Please, Potter. Let me go. I'll be good, I swear," whimpered Draco, as Harry tightened his grip on Draco's waist. It would have hurt, and yet still Draco made no move to flee. No matter how much he pretended, he wanted to be dominated, owned, hurt. "You get my cock in you, but if you come, no Scourgify. You've got to stay dirty all day, covered in my cum. Or I'll fuck your throat, and if you do a good job, maybe I'll suck you off too, but I won't let you come." Draco mewed as Harry's right hand roamed Draco's bare ass, taking it into his hand and squeezing. "What'll it be, sweetheart?" he said, crowding Draco again. Your cock, Merlin. Potter, please, in me." "Good boy," hummed Harry, pressing 2 fingers to Draco's mouth. Draco opened. God, if that wasn't one of the hottest things on the planet. his tongue swirling around Harry's digits the same way he would if it were his prick. After a moment, he pulled them out of Draco's hollowed cheeks. And kissed him sloppily, one hand navigating south to open Draco. When he entered, Draco bit his lip, drawing blood, and Harry groaned, breaking the kiss. Draco let out another helpless sound as Harry's hand found the rhythm, releasing his iron grip on Draco's waist to fist his cock. Draco's head rolled back onto Harry's shoulder, letting out shrill squeaks of please over and over again. So needy. Harry let go of Draco's cock to spank his ass. Hard. Draco buckled forward, elbows giving in and falling against the wall with a soft cry that made Harry grin. Stepping forward, kicking Draco's legs apart as far as they could, with his trousers and pants still around his ankles. Spitting into one hand, the other undoing his own trousers, letting them fall as he palmed himself, smiling at the magnificent picture Draco made. He was cruel about it, smacking Draco's hole a few times with his cock, hearing a choked cry escape him. "You want this?" Harry asked, spanking again. "Harry," gritted Draco. He hated admitting it, this Harry knew, but lately Harry was beginning to revel in the feeling of Draco like this. Pride broken, helpless and embarrassed, like Harry was the only one in control. That he could either give Draco everything or leave him with nothing. It was the kind of power that Harry never thought he needed. "Do you want this?" he hissed into Draco's ear, hard cock pressed between the cleft of his arse. "Please," Draco whined. "Please don't make me say it." His arse pushing back against Harry, his body answering the question for him. "That's not an answer, pet," Harry said, grinding up against Draco. They were so close, just one push and he'd be inside. Harry, Merlin." His voice crooked, broken, so close to collapse. "Yes, Merlin, I want it. I need it. Need it so bad." And he did. He pushed in, slowly, and then all at once he was inside, and he felt an entire body spasm around it. He couldn't pause himself to allow Draco to adjust, and honestly, he didn't have the mind to care. Draco was moaning properly now, cheeks pressed against the cold stone, and a slight tear trickled down his face. He was, albeit rather rougher than he usually was, and that was saying something. Harsh, relentless thrusts into the tight heat of Draco. "Harry," Draco keened. "Oh, Merlin, that's... Harry didn't get to hear what it was or wasn't, because his free hand went and wrapped around Draco's throat. He felt more tears lick his hand, and God, it was amazing. Incredible, really, knowing he had so much control over that one person he'd always despised. It was like he was drunk on it. Draco came in his own hand, stroking himself, squeaking out through Harry's tight grip. Tightening impossibly so, and Harry couldn't help it. He came too, following Draco along rather suddenly. He let go, once the aftershock subsided, but not completely, resting a gentle hand on Draco's waist to keep him upright. He could feel Draco's body vibrate with exhaustion. You've never done that before." Draco's voice was croaked and raw, and Harry already noticed the deep red mark along his throat, his face glossy with tears. "You didn't mind, though, right?" he asked a little sheepishly as Draco slumped back against him, unable to support his own weight. "It was..." Draco cleared his throat, trying to stifle a cough, hand reaching up to wipe away drying tears. "It was... adequate." "Is that good or bad?" "It was fine, Potter, honestly," snapped Draco, making Harry tense a little. "Draco?" he asked gently, turning him around so they faced one another. "I'm not evil. You're allowed to tell me if you don't like something." He leaned down so his forehead was pressed to Draco's. "I know that," he bit out, arms weakly attempting to push Harry away. Harry caught his wrist. "Baby," he whispered gently. It was, for all intents and purposes, manipulation. He knew Draco became putty with pet names. And he did, melting in Harry's hold. "Was that good for you?" "Yes," he said, so quietly that Harry could hardly hear him. "A little too good." Harry's brow quirked. I don't like that you can do that to me, and that I'll let you do it, that I'll like it even, and," he sighed, not looking at Harry, "I just got control of my life back, and you keep... I hate that I like it. Draco, it's okay to let go of control every now and then, you know? I mean, that's the whole reason I'm here." Draco looked at him expectantly, obviously confused. "It's like I don't have to think about anything with you. It's like how it used to be with us just fighting, and there wasn't a bigger picture or a war. It just feels like you could ask anything of me when we're, and I'll do it, no question, and that scares the shit out of me. Seriously, Draco, I know the feeling," he chuckled. "With Ginevra?" "No, you idiot, with you." "Oh, I think it's okay to be like that sometimes. Like I'm completely honest with you. I don't trust you, likewise, but I trust you like this," he added, sweeping his hand to cup Draco's jaw, feeling the rough stubble there. Draco gulped, staring blankly at Harry. "I seriously don't think you realize how much control you have of me. I mean, fuck, Draco. I'm here right now. I have Gin, and I'm here right now with you. You could fuck my entire life up, my friendships, my relationships, and still, I'm here." Draco kissed him, gently, just lips pressed against one another. It was simple, yet somehow the feeling that would wrap around him was so strange. Draco pulled away with a soft chuckle, pulling his trousers back up his waist, Harry following suit. "Speaking of friends, actually, I've been considering Dean Thomas's offer." Harry snorted, pushing his glasses back up his nose. "Why?" Draco shrugged. "I don't know. Change of scenery, maybe? And he's quite fit. Plus, everyone needs a rebel phase. I feel like me dating a muggle-born could be mine." "Your rebel phase isn't screwing me?" "Doesn't count if nobody knows about it." "Isn't it a bit fucked that you'd only be dating him because he's muggle-born?" "Firstly, I said that was a factor, not a reason. You're quite deaf. Secondly, I can do what I like." Harry snorted. "I know, Malfoy." "You don't have to be jealous, Potty," smirked Draco, wiping his hair out of his eyes. "Who said I'm jealous?" "I don't know. You seemed pretty jealous last night," he said with a twinkle in his eye, moving back to Harry so they were chest to chest. "Don't be stupid, Malfoy. I know I have nothing to be jealous about." And he reached down to squeeze Draco's ass. "You really think anyone will ever be able to fuck you like I can?" "Who knows, Potter? I've got nothing to compare it to, do I?" Harry chuckled and kissed Draco's cheek wetly. "If I'm not mistaken, you're currently missing ancient runes." Draco rolled his eyes, adjusting his shirt, moving to turn and leave. "And don't forget, Malfoy, no Scourgify." Draco smirked back at him and left. And Harry was alone, smiling, with an odd feeling in his chest. Chapter 4. It wasn't often that Harry spent the whole night in Draco's bed. It wasn't like he'd meant to. They'd gone at it 3 times that night, and Harry wasn't sure he could get his limbs to function to move himself. But truth be told, he didn't entirely mind it. It was nice, waking with Draco's face in his neck. their naked bodies pressed together so close. He hummed, pressing a kiss to the top of Draco's soft hair, watching his eyelashes flutter awake. "Potter," he mumbled, sounding pleased as Harry slipped down his body. He could hear the smile in Draco's voice as he spoke. "Again?" Harry pressed a kiss to Draco's chest, rolling him so Draco's back was flat on the bed now. He moved carefully down Draco's body, hand tracing over the lean muscle on his torso, as his head dipped under the covers, lips tracing Draco's hip bones, hand coming down to stroke Draco's twitching cock. "Wonderful," whispered Draco, still hungover with lust from the night before. Harry chuckled against the cool skin before re-angling his body properly to lie comfortably between Draco's legs, flattening his tongue against his cock in time with Draco's sighs. He was careful, taking the head into his mouth, sucking lightly, just to tease, forcing a groan out of Draco. "That's nice," Draco murmured, still half asleep. Harry let out a quiet laugh before swallowing Draco whole. Draco tensed, a soft squeak coming out, as his legs pulled in on himself, thighs pressed against Harry's ears. He took all of Draco in his mouth, reaching the hilt of soft blonde hair. It was wonderful. And he had a little bit of pride knowing that he could take all of Draco easily. Granted, Harry was also a lot bigger than Draco in that respect. He could hear Draco's heartbeat on his tongue and knew he was close. He sped up, just slightly, head bobbing in rhythm. And then the door swung open. "Hey Draco, have you seen my pansy?" Draco snapped. And Harry popped off Draco, eyes wide with a mix of horror and relief, thankful she could not see him from under the covers. "Holy shit," she giggled, noticing the body between Draco's legs. "Get out," he yelled. He could hear her wheeze of a laugh as she let out another, "Holy shit!" "Pansy, get out, you disgusting wench!" "Whitby, is that you?" she giggled, and Harry felt himself begin to tense, figuring out his exit. "It's not! Get out!" wailed Draco, bringing the covers higher to cover Harry more. "I'm serious! Out!" All right. There was a smack as the door slammed shut. "Shit," Draco murmured. Both their hard-ons were officially gone. "She's going to be waiting outside to see when you leave." "Fuck." Harry slid up from under the covers hesitantly. "You can slip out through the bathroom door, but it'll be pretty obvious if no one leaves." "Will it?" Draco shrugged, gnawing on the nail of his thumb before nodding, coming to a conclusion. "All right, you leave. I'll sort it out." "Malfoy," he said in warning, but Draco shook his head, already getting out of bed to throw Harry his stuff, while simultaneously slipping on his boxers. "What?" "Come on," said Draco, now fully dressed, already at the bathroom door, checking carefully before using it as a hallway to Harry's room. Harry, throwing on his clothes as they walked, followed him through, cautiously. "Your cloak! Where is your cloak?" Harry gulped and gestured to the shimmering fabric on his desk. Draco scoffed and threw it over himself. "What? Don't leave until you hear us in the hallway." But Draco was already slipping out of the room, carefully slow so Pansy wouldn't hear anything. Harry sat on the bed, pale-faced, head in his hand, trying his best not to freak out that one of the school's biggest gossips could possibly know about him and Draco. He rose when he heard it. 3 voices in the hallway. He couldn't tell what they were saying, or even who they were. But his head was fuzzy, and he followed Draco's instructions on instinct. He stood and walked, opening his door and stepping out into the hallway. He wasn't sure what he'd expected to see, but it certainly wasn't Malfoy hanging off Dean's arm as Pansy grilled them both. Seriously, what the fuck? I can't believe you didn't tell me, Pansy squawked at Draco. Draco shrugged as Dean grinned and tightened his arm around him. Fuck. Suddenly, he realized they'd noticed him, staring dumbfoundedly in the hallway. He said smartly. Morning, Dean? Dean grinned right back at him. Harry, obviously using his brain, turned on his heels and trotted back down the hallway, trying to ignore what the fuck was going on. He was on autopilot for what felt like the whole thing until breakfast, eyes still glossy with confusion, only muttering a at Ginny's good morning peck. You didn't, Ron snapped the moment Dean and his stupid grin sat down. Please tell me I did not hear from Pansy Bloody Parkinson that she walked in on you blowing Malfoy this morning. It was at this approximate moment that Harry's brain went haywire, spitting out his pumpkin juice onto his omelette. What? He spluttered. Maybe yes, maybe no, Dean said coolly, turning his head to spin around at the Slytherin table and wink at Malfoy. What the fuck? Malfoy smirked right back. Why was Dean covering for Malfoy? Obviously, Draco had snuck him under the cloak through the hallway bathroom into his room to trick Pansy. But why the fuck had Dean got along with it? And more importantly, what had Draco told Dean? Fuck. Unfortunately, nobody could get a solid answer out of Dean, no matter how hard they prodded. Harry wasn't even going to bother trying. No, he needed to get the information out from the source. He found Draco during their free period in the library, mulling over a book when Harry stormed in. What did you tell him? Snapped Harry, trying to keep his voice down despite the fury that was bubbling. That Pans caught me getting head from some closet case, and I needed him to cover for me so she wouldn't out him, he said coolly, not even looking up. Why the fuck would he agree to that? Because I agreed to go on a date with him, he sighed, closing the book, finally looking up at Harry. I implied that he technically wouldn't be lying about us engaging in said activities if we did, in fact, carry them out later. So wait, sneered Harry, still high on anger. You told him that if he lied about sucking your dick, you'd actually let him. Draco rolled his eyes, clearly bored. That, amongst other things. That's fucked, Malfoy, gritted Harry, sliding down the wall to sit beside him. Draco raised a brow and squinted. So you'd have preferred Pansy to know it was you sucking me off this morning? Harry gritted his teeth. That's straight-up prostitution, Malfoy. You're literally offering him a sexual favor in order to get him to do something for you. It implied being the important word, Potter. I didn't agree to anything except a date. And if said date goes well, who knows? He's fit. I'm fit. I think you understand what happens after that. Harry grunted back a reply. And maybe, Potter, just maybe, I actually like the idea of not being someone's dirty little secret. I mean, you're fun, but no offense. You're not exactly relationship material for me, he smirked, nudging Potter gently. And fuck, if it wasn't that smirk that evaporated all remnants of rage left in him. Right back at you, Malfoy, Harry said, working very hard on keeping that smile off his face.
Chapter 5. Harry was well aware he was making excuses for himself. Logically, his brain knew he had no real interest in going to the Three Broomsticks Saturday evening. But Dean wouldn't shut up about his impending date with Malfoy, and honestly, it was driving Harry a little insane. Which was weird, because why would he care that Dean had scored a date with Malfoy? It wasn't like Malfoy actually liked Dean anyway. Still, he couldn't help himself, making up some excuse about wanting to catch up with Luna properly. They hadn't spoken in a while. No one would suspect a thing if he popped up to get drinks with her. Dean nor Malfoy noticed them sitting in the booth behind them. Luna tipping 2 spoonfuls of sugar into her butterbeer, smiling softly to herself. Harry couldn't hear the conversation well, what with the bustling crowd of the pub. Though he did notice Malfoy laughing. A lot. An unnecessary amount of laughter. Like, seriously, Dean wasn't even that funny. In Harry's opinion, Dean was a blank slate of boredom, and on top of that, kind of a douche. Obviously, Harry didn't like him. He was Ginny's ex, duh. Still, he was pretty sure Dean wasn't that fucking funny. Dean brought Malfoy another glass of elf wine, and not so subtly wrapped his arm around Malfoy's shoulder. And to top things all off, Malfoy didn't even move away. If anything, he leaned further into the touch, looking up at Dean through those pale lashes, allowing himself to be held. "My, Harry, those Raxburts have really got a hold of you, haven't they?" said Luna, taking a sip of her sweetened butterbeer. Yeah," he said, feeling a little bit stupid, trying not to focus on the sound of ringing laughter coming from the other table. Luna set down her drink, staring at him intently. "You know, Harry, they say Raxburts are drawn to people with intense thoughts." She paused, blinking, as if she was making any sense. "What exactly are you thinking about that's gotten you so troubled?" Harry took another long swig of dragon barrel brandy. "It's not Ginny, is it?" asked Luna. Harry's head shot up, and he spluttered out his drink. What? No, what makes you think it's about Ginny? It's not. Everything's fine with Ginny." "All right, Harry," she said, airily, though she didn't seem all too convinced. And then another ripple of laughter. And Harry shot up out of his seat, taking his final swig of brandy. "I'm pretty tired. I'm gonna head back." "All right, Harry," she said again, eyes focused on the laughing couple next to them. He returned to the 8th year dorms in a mood, pacing in his room, his snitch zipping around his head furiously. He tried and failed to start his essay on the properties of garroting gas, paced some more, and then, when frustration struck him to his core, he threw his Transfiguration textbook at the wall. He looked up when a knock rattled his door. "Yeah?" Ron sprung inside, purple-faced and breathless. "Harry, mate, I think I'm going to pluck my eyeballs out." "Huh?" "They're on the couch, in the common room. I just walked in and saw them. I swear to Merlin, Harry, please obliviate me." "Who?" "Dean and Malfoy." Harry blinked. Frustration and morbid curiosity barreled through him all at once as he stood and shot out the door, down the hallway to the common room. And there they were. Ron had caught up with him, hands covering his eyes. They were on the couch, or at least Dean was. Malfoy was fully seated in Dean's lap, as Dean pulled him into another drunken kiss, hands roaming down to Malfoy's arse. "You have your own room for a reason!" bellowed Ron, eyes still covered. Malfoy's shirt was buttoned down almost all the way, a bright purple Hickey blooming at his collar, one Harry certainly hadn't left. The two halted their dry humping to giggle drunkenly into each other's mouths. "I think we've been caught," slurred Draco, pressing a sloppy kiss to the side of Dean's mouth. Harry's stomach coiled, hating how someone other than him had heard Draco's sex-driven whispers. Dean giggled back and pulled Draco down into another kiss. Ron groaned. Stop! My eyes!" Draco snorted and broke the kiss, rolling his hips before sliding off Dean, taking Dean's hand to help him up. It didn't really work as they were both stumbling into each other's arms, giddy with excitement. Harry gritted his teeth, but said nothing as Draco and Dean stumbled past them. He didn't miss Draco's eyes on him, a soft smirk as their gazes met. "Night, Potter," he called, following Dean down the hallway. Chapter 6. Ginny snored. Not the kind of placid sigh Draco let out. She snored like Ron. He used to like it. He used to think it was cute. Currently, though, he resented it. It kept him up late enough to hear Dean sneak into Malfoy's room. At first, he thought they were just fooling around, like they had been for the past week. A quick snog, maybe a blowy like on Tuesday night. But this time... See, Harry knew Malfoy. Knew Malfoy in bed, at least. He knew how he sounded with a mouth on his cock. He also knew what Malfoy sounded getting pounded against the headboards. He knew the difference. So, when the sighs and low moans turned to something much more high-pitched and helpless, Harry sat straight up in bed. He didn't know what was worse, the fact that Malfoy was now sleeping with someone other than Harry, or that by judging by the sounds coming from the room, Malfoy was enjoying it. He hadn't seen Malfoy much that week, determinedly avoiding him whenever possible, to prevent punching Dean in his ugly fucking mug, which probably would have raised some questions. He'd given one hand job and a broom cupboard, and that was all. Part of Harry told him that that was good. He could go back to being Ginny's. The other part of Harry, the louder, more violent part of him, wanted to bend Draco over right in front of Dean and show him who Draco really belonged to. But now, Draco was letting Dean fuck him, a position that had been previously reserved for Harry only, and Harry didn't know what to think. The only silver lining was that, because Malfoy was so fantastic and tight and perfect, Dean finished after only a few minutes, leaving Harry in horrified silence. He didn't sleep that night. How could he? What with thoughts of Draco replaying in his mind over and over again. He wasn't even in control of his own body by morning, allowing Ginny to guide him to the breakfast hall. She probably thought he'd had another nightmare. More like a nightmare came true. He wasn't sure why he was so bothered by it. It wasn't like he and Draco were monogamous. Harry had a girlfriend, for fuck's sake. Harry was straight. He knew that for a fact. He liked girls. And yet this bothered him more than anything. Draco and Dean, fucking, together. No. He had to deal with it. He couldn't just let himself be pent up with rage because two people he knew were fucking each other. It really shouldn't have been a big deal. He just hadn't fucked Draco in a while, is all. He wasn't jealous of Dean's relationship with Draco. No, he just wanted another piece of it. Cornering Draco after potions was easy. There were no portraits in the room and no classes for the rest of the day. All he had to do was tug on Draco's sleeve when everyone was leaving and nudge him away from the door, pinning him against one of the counters as soon as the door slammed shut, pressing wet kisses along Draco's neck. "Harry," Draco whined in realization. Harry grinned against his neck, fumbling his hands down Draco's trousers to palm him. "Harry, wait," Draco said, a little louder. Harry smiled. Part of him always loved the game of cat and mouse. He could feel Draco writhing against him, trying to push back. God, it felt good. "No, you can't. Wait," Draco said, voice sounding sterner than normal. But Harry was too dazed to notice any difference in his voice. Maybe Draco needed it more than normal too. "Don't," he snapped, when Harry shoved all his body weight down to keep him still, just how Draco liked, already working on undoing the buckle on Draco's slacks. "Stop, Harry," Draco shouted when Harry went to palm his cock. No, Harry, stop." You know when you're driving, specifically a Ford Angela, and you daze off a bit on the motorway, snapping back just in time before you realize you're about to collide with a giant cement truck. That's what Harry felt like when his brain let him think for one single second, noticing the change from pretend to real, to very, very real. He leapt back, eyes wide. "Fuck," Draco spluttered, pale face, pulling his trousers up his hips. was all Harry could muster, trying to increase the distance between them. I just thought, you normally, I didn't sleep last night, and I couldn't tell the difference, and Harry, Draco said, breathing evenly once more. You're right. I've never said no and meant it. He shook his head, refusing to look away from Harry, stepping forward to take Harry's hand, even when Harry flinched away. Not today, Harry. Harry nodded. I really didn't know. It's just, you said you liked it. I said yes then, Harry, he said with a soft smile, reaching up to play with the ends of Harry's fringe. That's not a yes for the rest of eternity. Harry gulped. You didn't want a safe word. Draco sighed, tugging at a strand of hair covering Harry's eyes. I don't know, Harry. It makes it all a lot easier if I can pretend it's all you. That I can tell myself it's okay that I liked it, because I didn't have any choice in the matter, even if I did. Babe, Harry said, slowly, regaining his confidence. I wouldn't actually do that to you. No, I know, you're the golden boy. You wouldn't hurt a bloody house elf. Who would hurt a house elf? Draco glared back at him. Off topic, I know, Harry chuckled, then focused again. How can I know then, if you're being real or not? What if I tap your side? He pressed his palm to Harry's right flank. Like this, and it means chill out. All right, Harry nodded, then sighed. Can I ask, what was different about today? Was it me, or... No, it wasn't. Dean asked me to be his boyfriend. Harry felt his blood run cold. And I said yes. And all the air left the room. And I've done a lot of bad things, Harry. And Dean's a good person. It just felt wrong to do that with you hours after he asked me. And I'm trying to not be a bastard anymore. Harry gulped. Does that mean you think I'm a bad person? 'Cause of Ginny? Draco chuckled, pressing a soft kiss to Harry's cheek. I think that you've done so many good things in your life that you're allowed to do one or two bad ones to make up for it. Who knows? I'm a little biased. Harry smiled as Draco pulled away, catching him and bringing their lips together. His entire body swelling with warmth wherever he touched Draco. Not heat, not burning, not lust. This was warmth. Soft warmth like summer sun. He knew there was a word for it, but he couldn't quite find it on his tongue. But it was strange with just how the sight of Draco could bring him out of a jealous, frosty mood into something yellow and bright. Wonderful, he muttered, breaking the kiss. Draco laughed, stepping back, focusing on doing his belt properly. I'll be off, Potter. Boyfriends to snog, gingers to torment. And then, in an even weirder moment, Harry allowed himself to believe Draco was talking about him, his boyfriend. Weird, huh?
Chapter 7.
November brought a chill to Hogwarts, creeping into the castle, turning cheeks pink and fingers numb. Harry couldn't feel it, though. All he felt was heat. Wild, dangerous heat like green fire. It was bad enough that people started to notice. Hermione with her longing, helpless gazes, and Ginny with calming words and fingers curled into the nape of his neck. It was Malfoy's fault, he kept trying to tell himself. He and Dean's relationship had brought a palpable distance between them that made Harry's stomach hurt. It wasn't like he missed Malfoy. They still had their midnight trysts together every so often, but he could tell by Malfoy's ambivalent, guilty face that something had changed. And that scared Harry, and he wasn't sure why. And whenever he saw Dean and Malfoy together, He felt almost sick with the pure wrongness of it all. It made him mad in a way he hadn't been in a long time. But you knew it got bad, really bad, when Ron brought it up, tugging on his sleeve and pulling him into his room. "Mate," he said in a quiet, remorseful voice, "you've got to tell us what's been going on with you." Harry gulped, moving to sit on Ron's bright orange bedspread. "It's nothing, really. I'm fine." Ron sighed and came to sit beside him. "Harry, I'm serious, it's nothing." "It isn't nothing, Harry. You've been so uptight lately, so bloody weird that no one can figure out what happened." "That's because nothing happened." Ron shook his head and clasped his hands on Harry's back. "Please, mate, give me something to work with here." And then he paused. "Ginny said some things to me, and it's making me scared." "Well, if she knows so much about me, why don't you just ask her?" he snapped, that rage spilling into his words. Ron blinked back at him. "Has something happened between you two?" "What? No, everything's fine. Has she said something has?" "Merlin, you're difficult." "And besides, even if it had, it's not exactly I can talk to you about it." Ron grimaced. "You're right, I'm her brother, but Harry, I'm also your best friend. I can be objective with the both of you, and if you're not comfortable, I can get Hermione." "Geez, Ron, please don't. She'll make everything 1,000 times worse." Ron chuckled and nodded. "So, are you going to spill?" "You're not going to like it." Brother mode off, best friend mode on. Harry groaned, leaning forward, face in his hands. "When you're with Hermione, or even not with her, do you ever, think about other people?" He tried, voice strained, determined to say people and not person, man, Malfoy. Ron went pink. "Like, during sex?" Harry bit out a cold laugh. "And every other moment? Is it wrong that I'm still attracted to other people? Possessive about other people who aren't her?" Ron seemed to think about this for a moment before answering. "I mean, I'm not blind. Yeah, I see a girl and think she's fit. And shit, maybe I'll have a wank over it. But it's not like anything more than that. And not when I'm with Hermione, I don't think." "What if it's more than that?" Ron bit his lip. "This is going to sound weird, but maybe bring it up with Ginny." "What? You're crazy. You tell Hermione you rub one out over other girls?" "That's different. Ginny isn't Hermione. Hermione's always been a little insecure about that stuff, after Lavender. Ginny would probably think it's funny. I mean, you love her, and it's not like you're ever going to cheat on her or anything." That hit Harry right in the heart. "No, I wouldn't," he lied. "You need to stop being so hard on yourself. Ginny won't care if you say you're attracted to a bunch of random bints or some girl you saw on the Muggle telly." "What if it isn't that, though? What if it's just one person?" he said, testing the waters. Ron went a bit stiff beside him. Harry turned and could see the brother side of Ron scrambling to speak, but he held it down, nodding slowly. "I think maybe that's a bit different. I mean, it wasn't a big deal before. Before it was just like, wow, you're hot. But now they're dating someone, and I don't really get it." "Merlin," Ron gulped, turning away, forcing his eyes to stay steady on the bookcase from the bed. "I think you just gotta stay far away from them, till you forget about it." Harry nodded, slowly. Keep his thoughts steady. He couldn't let them stray to Draco's hand and Dean's from yesterday morning. "All right," he said, more to himself than to Ron. "Can you not tell anyone about this, especially not Hermione, or Gin for that matter?" Ron clapped a hand on Harry's back, maybe a little too hard, and said, "Sure, mate, I got you." Chapter 8. It was harder than Harry thought to stay away from Draco, which was strange, as he and Draco were sun and moon in terms of schedule. Draco hardly ever went to breakfast, and when he did, he was quick and subtle, so that even Dean couldn't notice him. And other than potions, they had no classes together. If he wasn't so keenly aware of it, Draco would fly past him without a second glance, except for one small problem: the bathroom. The divider that worked as a secret passageway between them. Harry could hear him and Dean through that thin wooden door, the worst kind of echo. When they brushed their teeth, Draco would flirt, Harry would stare and scratch the back of his neck. He wouldn't touch him, not any more, but he couldn't help but steal quick glances of that thin, pale frame of his. It was strange that he missed him. Harry didn't even really know Draco, except he did. He knew his body, knew his face, knew his voice. He longed for something he never even had. But it was worth it. It should have been worth it, at least, for Ginny. They were having sex more regularly, which he supposed was a good sign. At least Draco hadn't turned him completely bent. Ginny was similar to Draco, more similar than Harry had ever allowed himself to notice. He was so completely hung up over it that he forced himself to find things of Draco in Ginny. Quidditch, that was the main thing, he supposed. How both their eyes would brighten at the topic. But that was not all. They both looked at him the same, too. The quick cock of a brow, a snicker at his bad joke. And while her waist was thinner and her hips were wider, and how they didn't really feel the same at all, sometimes Harry could just close his eyes and pretend it was Draco in his bed. Though he knew it wasn't right, because they were so different. Ginny was all gold, golden eyes and copper hair, a warmth to her skin from time spent outside with her brothers. She shimmered like all hell, rich and solid with giggles like summer, sturdy and unblemishable. Harry used to think she was gold to Draco's silver, rarer, more desired, the first choice for any man. He was wrong, though. So very wrong. Because Draco was platinum hair and near white eyes, skin the colour of snow, marred by the indentations of scars, one of a kind. Except Draco wasn't his the way Ginny was. Draco had Dean now, Dean and only Dean. It was easier to pretend that Dean was wrong for him, but as the 2 weeks passed by, he realized that wasn't it. It was Harry who'd been wrong. Never, not once, had Draco come to him. It had always been Harry, showing up at Draco's house, or in his room, or cornering him behind a tapestry. Had Draco ever even wanted him? He seemed to move on to Dean as if nothing had changed. That they hadn't even needed to speak about it. Harry had just stopped coming up to him after their conversation with Ron. And Draco seemed just fine, happy even. That was the part that pissed Harry off the most, because Draco had tangled him up in his web of attraction, showed him how good he could really feel, but had felt none of the withdrawal of losing it. It affected him more than he thought anything as minute as sex could. That's all it really was, sex, and yet he couldn't stop thinking about it. It was early December by the time his brain lost it. He and Ginny had gotten drunk together for one of their anniversaries. Harry wasn't sure which one. First kiss? Making it official? He didn't think so. This time last year he'd been running for his life. They tumbled upstairs, giggling softly to each other as he pressed sloppy kisses to the side of her freckled face. "You have a room, you know," drawled the voice, stepping around to move to his own door. Harry looked up and gulped. There was something about that night that changed Draco. His hair was just a little lighter, poised so elegantly against the door frame, mocking him with the same slight aristocratic tilt of his jaw. "Draco," Harry slurred, steadying himself on Ginny's shoulder. At the use of his first name, Draco flinched a little before composing himself. "Potter, Weasley, have a good night, and do remember to cast a spermicide charm." And then he left, strutting into his room without a second glance. "Come on, Harry," Ginny cooed, pulling him inside of his own room. Their lips meeting once more. Harry was drunk enough to close his eyes and imagine the hair his hands were tangling in was white, not bright red. They'd had sex, quick and awkward and rather embarrassing on his behalf. But they'd both been too drunk to care, he especially so, and Ginny'd fallen asleep in his arms almost instantly. But as he lay there, sobriety seeping into his mind once more, Harry could only feel the pang in his chest at how good Draco had looked. Like he didn't have a care in the world, like he was unbothered that they didn't need each other any more. And he couldn't help himself but move, to walk unsteadily through the bathroom door and into Draco's room. Draco looked so peaceful when he slept, hidden half behind the covers, arms clutching a pillow. Harry was drawn to it, pulling back the covers to slide in beside him, still only clad in his boxers. His face was relaxed, gentle, eyes darting beneath their lids, a strand of overgrown fringe falling into his face. Harry reached out, pulling it behind his ear. The slight touch woke him, eyes fluttering softly, lips pursing. "Dean?" he mumbled, eyes blinking awake. "Guess again," Harry said softly. Draco made a quiet noise, recognizing him through sleep. "Harry," he murmured, unsure of himself. "You're different tonight," was all Harry could whisper, hands still carding through his soft hair. "It's the moon cycle." Draco yawned, nudging closer to Harry. "Vela genes," he specified when Harry looked concerned. "I tend to be a bit glittery on full moons. I'm surprised you noticed. You don't normally." Harry chuckled. It was true. Harry had only ever picked up on it once before. They couldn't be blamed for it. Draco had told him it was because Vela-born wizards didn't get the same lusty pull Vela-born witches did, that his beauty was all his, and not the result of Grandfather Abraxas's affair with a Vela, that it slipped under the radar for most as just a trick of the light. "What?" Draco mumbled, still moving closer, warmth radiating off him. "Nothing, it's just, you're beautiful," he whispered back, drunkenness taking over his senses. Draco laughed, a gentle, quiet laugh that was still groggy from sleep. "That's definitely the Vela genes talking." Harry shook his head, sitting up to cup Draco's jaw, feeling the warm breath against his cheek. "Can I kiss you?" Draco looked taken aback, and Harry was a little shocked too. He wasn't sure if he'd ever asked Draco's permission for anything. He'd always just taken it. Draco's head dipped in a soft nod, and Harry leaned down, pressing his lips against Draco's. So soft, so tender. Just lips, nothing else. He wasn't sure he needed anything else. He was okay with just this. Draco broke the kiss to blink up at him, blonde lashes hooded with cheeks with shadow. But Harry needed more of that softness, leaning down to kiss the underside of his jaw, that pointy chin rough with light stubble. And then to his neck, faint, just ghosting his lips down Draco's Adam's apple. I need you, Draco," he whispered into warm skin. "Please?" Draco sucked in a breath, hand coiling up to wrap around the nape of Harry's neck. "Then have me." He was careful undoing the buttons of Draco's silky pajama shirt, as if each button deserved his utmost attention, with each one undone revealing another inch of shimmering skin for him to kiss, until all of him was exposed, careful hands sliding down pajama bottoms, so Draco's half-hard prick pressed against Harry's chest. A kiss pressed to his jutting hip bone. "You're very slow," Draco let out, almost a whisper. He was right. Normally, by this point, Harry would already be inside Draco, thrusting eagerly. But not tonight. He wasn't sure why, but tonight felt different. "I miss you," he said, after casting a lubrication spell on his fingers, not daring to meet Draco's eyes. "I've missed you too," replied Draco. "You have?" asked Harry quietly, free hand coming down to spread Draco's legs, to pull him closer onto his lap, caressing his thigh as he did, the other coming to rub gently against Draco's hole. "Yeah," said Draco, voice hitching as a single finger entered him. Harry couldn't stop his light menstruations against Draco's thigh, rubbing small circles against his skin with his left, the right gently prodding Draco open. He was so slow, so careful, like he couldn't risk losing this for a single second, leaning down to capture Draco's lips with his own once more, his tongue dipping inside in rhythm with his hands, until it was 2, then 3 fingers, and Draco was whimpering into his mouth. "Harry, I can't. Please," he said. "It's okay," said Harry, pulling out and sitting up, tugging down his boxers, right hand coming up to touch his neglected cock, positioning himself at Draco's entrance before pausing. "Do you want this?" he asked. "Potter!" Draco snapped, back arching up. "Hurry up!" "I just want to hear you say it. Please?" Draco froze, noticing the tenderness in Harry's voice, and gulped. Yes, Harry, I want this. I want you." Harry eased himself in, gripping Draco's waist to steady himself. It'd been so long since he'd been inside Draco, and fuck, it felt amazing. So fucking tight. He was slow, determined to feel it all. And Draco was groaning beneath him. "You're amazing," he muttered, bottoming out, collapsing forward so his hands framed Draco's face. One of Draco's long, elegant legs was thrown over his shoulder, trapping him in, the other tight around his hip, heel digging into his ass. "Harry, please, fuck me." Harry tried to, but it didn't feel like fucking. The slow nudge of hips, steady and deep, unhurried, as if they both had all the time in the world. He couldn't lose this. He couldn't risk missing it, forgetting the ethereal feeling shrouding them both. "Draco," he moaned, falling onto his elbows, their noses brushing. "Kiss me," Draco said, and Harry did. And God, it was everything. It was perfect, heaven. He could find nothing else like it. He couldn't stop. Yet he was so himself in that moment. The drunkenness had allowed something to breathe and expose itself. He wasn't controlled by lust or fever. He wanted this. He himself, and not this dark creature inside him that was so hungry for Draco's cries and reddened marks. He was so hard, so close, but still he felt like he could do this forever. It wasn't just the tightness, the perfect feeling of being inside him. It was more. He didn't even have words for it, just the sense of warmth. Like he found something he really wanted, a desire to do something that had been so lacking since defeating Voldemort. He wasn't sure how long it had been. A while, he supposed. Longer than either of them usually lasted. Draco's climax reached him quickly, heavy with the friction of Harry's body rubbing against his cock. And that was all Harry needed, that helpless moan, and he was coming too. He couldn't pull out. He didn't want to move. He wanted to stay like this forever. Draco was shivering, hand coming up to pull a sweaty strand of hair out of Harry's eyes as he smiled, the softest smile Harry had ever seen on Draco. He looked like he was about to speak, to say something. And then the door swung open. Chapter 9. Draco was shivering, hand coming up to pull a sweaty strand of hair out of Harry's eyes as he smiled, the softest smile Harry had ever seen on Draco. He looked like he was about to speak, to say something. And then the door swung open. And Dean was staring down at them. Silence filled the room. Horrible, horrible silence. And fuck, Harry was still inside Draco, and Dean could see. Fuck. Behind him, the door clicked shut, his blank, glazed-over eyes widening as he seemed to understand what was going on. "Oh," he said, unmoving. "Dean!" shouted Draco in horror, shoving Harry off him, and fuck, they were both naked, and Dean knew, and Harry was paralyzed, because he was going to tell Ginny, who was going to tell Ron, who was going to tell Hermione, and then we're all going to hate him. "You're with him," said Dean, as if to reiterate it to himself, and then affirming, "You're sleeping with Harry." He was sure now, anger bubbling up, as clear as the dawn on the horizon. "You fucked him," Dean snapped, horrified at his own words. "Dean, keep your voice down," whispered Draco, creeping closer, still completely nude, cum dribbling down his thigh. I, spluttered Dean, and then a little quieter. "He was the one Parkinson caught you with. That's why you had his cloak." "Yes," said Draco, voice breaking a little. "Dean, please." How many times did you fuck him? How many times did you lie to me?" Draco didn't say anything, which translated to enough times to feel guilty to tell you. And then, in a voice Harry hadn't heard since the war, he said, "I didn't mean to." It was the truth, because he'd never started anything with Harry, he'd just let it happen. And oh God, it was all Harry's fault. He couldn't even pretend to blame Draco for that. "We stopped, I swear, we stopped, when you and I, but..." Draco's voice was so shaken. It was the worst thing Harry had ever heard. It was hard to feel anything but sympathy for Draco, which was strange, especially when Dean's eyes softened, staring, and then Dean's fury turned to him, those blaring dark eyes burning into his soul. "And what's your fucking excuse, Harry? Ginny wasn't enough for you?" "Please don't tell her." It was Draco. Draco reaching out and clutching Dean's shoulder. "Why shouldn't I?" he sneered, still staring at Harry. "She deserves to know. Do you fucking know what this feels like?" No one spoke. Harry clutched the bed sheets higher on his torso. "Harry, you're my fucking friend, and you looked me in the eye and lied to me. You fucked my boyfriend, and you didn't give a shit." And then he paused, turning to Draco. "And you?" His eyes softened with tone. "How could you?" "You can't tell Ginny," whispered Draco. Everybody loves her. She's the Golden Boy's future bride, and if they find out, they'll hate me. They won't care about Harry. It'll be me they hate. It'll be me that takes the blame, and I can't." Draco stopped and looked away. "I'm sorry, Dean. You deserve better." "Nobody deserves to feel like this, especially not Ginny," said Dean, eyes back on Harry. Harry ducked his head, focusing away from Dean. He was so right. Harry knew that deep inside, or at least he was coming to realize how much he was hurting Ginny without even her knowing. But he couldn't count. He wasn't gay. He wasn't. And there was no way he could feel the same way about Draco, a bloke he hates. than he felt about his beautiful, perfect Ginny. Except his mind kept forcing pictures of him and Draco from just a few minutes prior. He felt sick. He was going to vomit. "What, you don't have anything to say for yourself?" snapped Dean. Harry shook his head, hair falling over his face. "Potter," Draco said, voice low and careful, "I think you should leave." And Harry wasn't sure what he wanted at that moment. He didn't want to stay. In all honesty, he wanted to run away and pretend it had never happened. But he was sure he couldn't move. "Harry," Draco said, desperation dripping into his tone, a plea, helpless, begging like he didn't know what else to do. Harry hated it so much. He wanted to rewind time to 5 minutes ago, when he had Draco in his arms, staring up at him with those glossy grey eyes. He stood, slow, his head going fuzzy as he did, fumbling for his boxers, pulling them up his hips as he walked, refusing to look back, refusing to listen to the voices as he entered the bathroom, passing through in a daze to his own room. Ginny was still asleep on the bed, her snoring now muted. He crawled carefully beside her, still the faint haze of voices audible from the next room. "Harry?" she said groggily, eyes still squeezed shut as he curled his body around her. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Go back to sleep," he whispered into her hair. Chapter 10. They'd broken up. Draco and Dean had broken up. He shouldn't have been so surprised by it. It wasn't like Dean and Draco were ever going to work out long term. He was a phase for Draco, and Draco had told him just as much. A fun little thing to get his father's blood pressure up. But shit, did Harry feel bad. He didn't care. He really didn't. Or at least, he didn't until he noticed the soft look on Draco's face, drenched in guilt. Should that have been how Harry felt with Ginny? He wasn't sure. Dean knew, which was the worst part of all of it. Dean knew about him and Draco. And it was just a ticking time bomb until things got worse. "Cheer up, mate," said Ron, slapping Dean's back, handing him another shot of fire whiskey. Dean didn't look up, brown eyes still glossy as he accepted the drink, holding it above his nose but not drinking it. "He was a prick anyway, come on," added Ron, slinging an arm around Hermione in the booth. "Leave it alone, Ron," snapped Ginny, reaching over the table and smacking Ron's wrist. "He's allowed to be upset. You're just making things worse." "Let's talk about something else, yeah?" added Harry, a little awkwardly. Dean, for the first time that night, looked up and glowered over at Harry. Harry gulped and nudged closer to Ginny, practically in her lap. "Fine. What did you want to talk about, Harry?" Dean gritted out, eyes still fixed on him. "Got any news for the group?" he sneered. Harry gulped and stared at his empty glass. "Lay off, Harry," said Ginny sternly, arm gently touching his bicep. Dean let out a cold snicker. "Dean, mate, if anyone's going to take your shit, it's ought to be Malfoy," said Ron. "He's the slag who cheated." Dean's face deflated. "I mean, seriously, what do you expect? He'll sleep with anyone who'll have him. He's an ass. He's a slag. I mean, you didn't actually want to be saddled with that poofter anyway." "Ron!" Hermione spluttered, slapping the back of his head. Ron went a bit pink and turned to Dean. "I didn't mean." "He wasn't, though," Dean said in a meek voice. "He was just stupid, I guess. But it wasn't his fault." "So what, he tripped and fell into bed with someone else?" Dean shook his head. "It's hard to explain." And then again, he looked to Harry. "But it wasn't his fault. He's going through a lot right now. He's being treated like a piece of shit by someone, and he's going through it." "Fuck, alright, that hurt." "It wasn't like he was trying to hurt Draco. He wasn't.
He just couldn't stop himself. And the night Dean had caught them, he had been different. So fucking different. He was trying to be better. He really was. But ever since that night, it felt like he had left a piece of himself within Draco. And he was grasping and clawing to get it back. Christmas holidays came quickly, and rather abruptly, just 2 weeks, but it felt like a lifetime. That had been his first warning that something was wrong. The pull had been so strong, and so sudden. He hadn't understood it, and didn't think he ever would. It felt like a need, a raw, aching need to move, to get away, and of course, he knew where. He wasn't stupid enough to go to the manor. Lucius had returned from Azkaban, and would probably kill him on the spot if he saw him and knew his intentions. But it didn't feel like sex anymore. The need. It felt a little more than that, which scared him more than he thought to possibly admit. Something had definitely changed, and he knew this was more than any mistake he could ever have made.
Okay, so one of the main things I wanted to do with a lot of this parts in this section of the story is to kind of have a discussion on where the boundaries are with relationships, especially the portrayal of kind of hardcore BDSM relationships with like relatively young characters, because like Draco and Harry are meant to be like 18-ish in this fic, and I don't know what kind of level of sexual education they have. I don't think it's very good, judging from the Dursleys, or the Malfoys seem very, very conservative, so I don't think either of them have taught very good sex etiquette, and I think I wanted these characters to kind of have a bit more of a discussion about it, because they're in a very strange place in their relationship where they haven't been educated well enough about the lines and the correct way to do things in terms of healthy relationships, and they're also just coming out of a war. So I think I really wanted to spend this fic evaluating what that means, and just kind of talking about consent in a sexual relationship can be really scary, and I don't think a lot of fics, and for good reason because it's a difficult subject, a lot of fics with this kind of content really discuss it enough, and I really wanted to do that, because I'm assuming based on my analytics that a lot of the readers are my age, so like 18 to 20s, and I think we're also in a lot of the same stage that these characters are in, and if you're consuming a lot of this media, you might not have the best grip on how to be in a healthy relationship or have a healthy sexual relationship, and these characters are definitely not in any type of healthy relationship, and I wanted to talk about the effects of that on characters. Make sure you like, share and subscribe and leave a comment. I'm going to be posting the next couple of updates to this within the next few weeks. This fanfic is currently not finished, but I do have a clear outline. I'm just struggling a little bit with writer's block, so I decided I wanted to start uploading the podfic of this, because comments and notes really, really help me be more motivated to keep writing, and I wanted some more of that and some more ideas from maybe some new readers. So let me know what you thought.